Okay, so today we're going to be creating something a bit like this. This is a piece of artwork in 3 sections and it's called a triptych. I'll explain later why I decided to do this type of work today. And it's created just using pen and a brush, so some water. And the water, when you're creating your marks, the water just kind of smudges the pen out, kind of bleeds it out like this, and different marks like this at the top. This is how I did the sky. This here was how I created kind of the tops of the dunes, and then further down here we've got like bits of grasses and water and various things like that. So that's what I'm going to be doing to start with. I used an image of the Ainsdale dunes, and again I tried to get this quite dramatic contrast. We've got really dark areas and light areas. I've made it black and white to make it easier for us to see the tones, and then like I said, use different types of mark making to create this kind of really nice rough area at the front, and then contrast it with the softer tones of the sky. So that's what I'll be working on today. We're going to start with one of these first. So you will need your pen and your brush, some water and a tissue. Right, let's do that. So looking at this, you can see at the top we've got this kind of very soft effect, which is to create the clouds, and this is created by this effect where it's very, very light scribbling and then quite a bit of water. And then this other effect here, I'll show you how to do that, and I've used that here when I've been creating like the edges of the sand dunes. This one, I'd say I've used it further down here to create different kinds of grasses. This could be water, more grasses, different kinds, and then just like a general kind of dark scrubby area, and we'll be working on top of that. So this is what we can use the marks for. So what are we going to do? I've got my piece of paper ready, I've got some water, I have my pen which I've checked, gives quite a nice effect when it's wet. I've got a bit of tissue in case it gets too wet, and I've got my brush. So to start with, let's think about how you're going to hold the pen. Okay, so to get the first effect, which is the skies, I want it kind of really lightly, so I'm going to hold it almost at the end, not as if I was going to write with it. I'm going to hold it really lightly, and I want to use the side of the pen to kind of scribble with it, really quite light. We want it to go all the way across the page. You can go back a little bit, leave a bit here and there, all the way across the page. You can see when I'm working like this, I very often have my little finger sticking out, and I use that as like a, almost like a balance. I've got it all the way across to the edge. Right, the water out the way. I might knock it over again. Okay, so next thing we're going to try, I'm going to move my hand down the pen, and you're going to get a darker mark. So I'm just going to, I've got my little finger stuck out, as you can see. I'm not pressing on hard because it is like a fibre tip pen, and I'm just going to drag the pen all the way across to get quite a darker mark, but it's quite soft all the way to the edge. Kind of parallel to that, I'm going to try a broken line. So this time I'm dragging it, and as I'm dragging it, I'm taking it off the page just here and there. That would be quite nice if you're doing like the edge of a dune, or the edge of a little hill or something, and you didn't want it to look too hard. Next, another kind of broken line. So this time the pen is going to kind of waver, and you want like a nice natural kind of edge. So if you were doing a drawing of like some plants or something, this would be quite nice for that. And this could be like the edge of the leaves, give you a nice natural kind of feeling. You can see I'm holding it the same as I did for the other two marks. Now I'm going to change my grip. I'm going to go a bit further down, and I'm going to turn the paper because I want to be able to do some hatching and cross hatching whilst kind of scribbling. And I'm just here and there, this would be for like the edge of a dune, some kind of scribbly going in one direction then going back across it. So hatching and then cross hatching when you go back across it like that. moving my arm, so this time I'm just drawing with just my fingers. My fingers are moving. There we go, happy with that. Next, some straight hatching. So I've changed the angle of the paper again. Little finger comes into play again because I want to do some hatching. So if you're right-handed, you'll probably hatch down like this, kind of on a diagonal from right to left. If you're left-handed, you'd probably be working that way, and also your hatching would go in the opposite direction, just like Leonardo da Vinci, who was a very famous lefty. So I'm going to go right across with my hatching. Light marks, kind of parallel to each other, but not that important. Kind of light all the way across to the edge, go back a bit over some of them, and that's hatching. Same thing, what's that there? But this time, after we've done a bit, I'm going to turn the page, and also you can see I'm changing the angle of my hand, and I'm going to go over it again, and this is cross hatching. If you wanted it darker, you go across that way. So the hatching, and then the cross hatching. And again, if you're left-handed, you would swap it the other way. I do work quite quickly and confidently because I am now. I am confident in my drawing. Took a while, but there you go. If you work slower, that's fine, but you're trying to get a really quick mark. You're not drawing lots of grids, so it's quite a rough kind of hatching and cross hatching there. The next one, now I'm going to hold the pen a bit differently, near to the tip, and you get a darker mark straight away, and this is like kind of a pointy scribble, I suppose. And this is really good for when I was doing the areas near the front where I wanted it to look really kind of dark and scrubby looking. You don't want it too even, so if it goes too even, go back and change it a bit. Go back over it. I'm not pressing on, just if you want it darker, go back over an area and maybe a bit slower, so that allows the ink to get down onto the page. Okay, all the way. Very enjoyable. So it's like a pointy scribble. And just working with the fingers, so we're just drawing from the fingers like that. Next one, I'm going to turn the paper on an angle again, and this time think of like maybe like the movement of water. So you want to leave some little gaps, and I've now got my arm off the table and I'm kind of drawing from the shoulder here. Little fingers there giving me a guide. Nice soft movements, kind of parallel to the top and bottom of the page. There we go, happy with that. Now I'm going to try and draw some grasses. You want it to be quite natural, so doing some nice little flicks up as if it was growing from a point. And also the pressure, it starts off a little bit heavier and then lighter, so you're flicking it up. And I'm trying to make it a tiny bit curved as well, so it's like the natural shape of some of the grasses. Okay, and the angles, whichever's easier for you. You can turn the paper sideways or... No, just a few more to the edge, because then we can have a good practice of it. Some longer, some shorter, go back over it here and there. You're going from the bottom up. That's where you're going to hopefully get like a tip, a thinner tip on your little grass rather than the other way around, otherwise you get like a square end. Right, finally, last bit, let's just have a good scribble. So this would be to fill in like a large area. So some darker bits. I'm not pressing on because it is a fibre tip pen. Changing the grip slightly here and there. You can put the paper on the side if you want, whatever's easier for you. Just a nice, interesting, rough scribble. All the way across. Again, if you work slower than this, that's fine. You've got plenty of time. This is just a demonstration of the way I work very quickly. all the way to the edge, holding the paper still in the other hand. Happy with that. Oh yeah, very nice. So lid on, so the pen doesn't die a horrible death. And we're just about ready to add some water. Okay. Right, so different areas need different amounts of water, and also you want to have some areas darker and lighter than others so you can have contrast. So when I was doing the practice sheet, you can see this is this technique here. These areas are kind of a mixture of these. The water was the scribbled technique, and different, like I said, some different areas we want to use different amounts of water, and you need a tissue as well to hand because sometimes you don't want it to be that wet. So I've just got a bit of old kitchen roll and I've got my brush ready. Okay, so we're going to start, because I am right-handed, I'm going to start on the left, but if you're left-handed I'd start on the right, so you're not going to put your hand in it. With the clouds, we want it to be quite wet. So I've got quite a bit of water on the brush. I'm holding it loosely in the middle, and then I'm going to like put a wash across. And you can see straight away it starts to, well, bleed the pen. I'm only going to do it halfway. I'm going to leave it like that. Now, I'm going to wet the brush and take some of the water off for the next line. I'm going to hold it a bit more carefully because I want to touch the brush just to the edge of that black line to soften that edge. So if that was maybe the top of a hill and there was the sky behind it, you can see the way it starts to kind of pull the ink up into the water, gives it a really nice effect. Same kind of idea on the broken line, so a bit of water, some of the water off. And I'm letting the water kind of flow down the brush onto the page, and you get that really nice soft effect. Yeah, so this is looking almost like rain, I think. Okay, next bit. Holding the brush a bit closer to the end, and also I've turned the page, you can see, because I'm going to get rid of a bit more of that water. And now I want to be able to work this way. Now it's getting darker straight away. Now if you think it's too dark, get some of the water off. You can see it can go quite dark with this. I'm only going to go halfway. That's nice though. If you wanted to make it softer, wet the brush, get some of the water off, and then you can just drag the brush along the edge. You can see that it softens up the edge there. Right, next one. We've got the hatched. Let's see what happens here. Oh, it's running, which is quite nice. You can go across it, see what you get. Interesting texture. Again, that might be quite good for rain. Next one, I'm going to try and see what we get if we flick the brush up. So again, I'm pressing on with the brush and then off to get kind of, there we go, kind of like a grassy effect. Off and up. Doesn't seem as dark as the last time I did it. Oh no, maybe I'm doing it differently. That's why. Right, let's try the same technique on the darker area and see what we get. So I'm flicking up. Oh yeah, it's really working. Hope you can see what I'm doing. Yeah, move my hand to the side. So that would be really nice for the darker bits at the front. See the way the brush, so you press down and then up. So you like pressing the brush down and then lifting it up, and it means you get that kind of nice pointy effect. Right, the water. This is going to be water. I'm going to wet the brush, so it's quite wet, not dripping. I've got a bit rid of some of it. Turning it sideways because I want to create that kind of nice, working quite quickly again. You can see the way it's starting to pool in some areas. Very nice. Wet brush, some of the water off. Turn the page. It's a nice sheet, this. I'm really pleased. It's nice as it is. It's almost like a landscape just as it is, looking further away. We can look a bit later about how to create this feeling of depth. So again, I'm going to flick the brush up through these marks here, and you can darken it at the bottom, these little clumps of grasses. You don't want to cover the whole thing, otherwise you lose your definition. Just here and there. I'm purposefully leaving half of it not wet, not with water on it, because I want you to remember the different marks that you made and the effect that you get when you add the water. Okay, last bit, let's just go a bit crazy. So a bit of water, let's see what we get. Oh yeah, it's really bleeding in. Nice and dark. Let's try dragging it across the bottom, see what we get. Yeah, that's what one. So we know how we're going to use the pen. We've got an idea of the image that we're going to use. So I think we're ready to start our drawing. Get in. Okay, so we're going to start making our drawing. So I've got my image of the Ainsdale Dunes and I've split it into 3. And the way I did that was I just folded it over until I got 3 kind of roughly equal sections and then flattened it out. So see where I am. Okay, so I'm going to put it on top of the piece of paper I'm going to use, and using my pencil I'm just going to lightly mark out where the horizon's going to be, like that. Okay, so the first third, which is this one, I can see it's going to be about there. Move it over, and then just really lightly, there's a hill going down there. That's going to be about there. There's another hill, and I know it's going to end up there, and then there's another one peeping in the background. Again, remember, you're just doing an impression of it. A few little dark marks, see where I am? Yep. Next section. Okay, so it's going to join up there. It's going to go from there to there. Put it to one side so I can see. So we've got that hill, dip down a little valley, then gradually up. Light marks, and that other hill in the background. This, I want it to join up there. Then that's going across to about there. There's kind of a lighter bit there, and that little sign is about there, I think. Again, remember, this is an impression of it, so it doesn't have to be madly accurate. You can leave bits out if you don't like them, and you can add bits in. Okay, last section. Yep. So I can join that onto there, and then now that's going to be there. Right, so the water. This is the water. I'm going to move it over so I can see what I'm doing. There we go. So now that little bit of water is going to be there. I think I've done it a bit bigger than in the picture, but what the heck. That stick, bit of fence post is about there. Hills roughly there. Some other bits. What's this here? I don't know. What is it? Darker bit. And I think that's about it. So that's just roughly sketching out. Yep, it's kind of like that. That's all we're looking for. Okay, go for it. So now adding in our first pen marks. So we're going to be looking to use the different techniques and also looking at our piece and thinking, right, well, in the sky I want this. So I've got this image, I've got it right in front of me, and I'm using that to help me think, where's it going to be dark or light. So I'm going to hold the pen lightly, do the sky first, and I'm really kind of lightly, I've got my hand up off the page, lightly sketching in where I think it's going to go. Darker and light. Some of it is just going to be left because then we can bleed the ink out to create the cloud shapes. And in here it's quite a bit darker, so I want to make it a bit darker there. Whoops, come on pen, don't die on me now. Yeah, so really lightly kind of sketching, and I'm going across the whole image just so I can get my clouds to match up. Any other darker bits? Yep, darker there. Oh, a bit more in the middle, I think. Whoops, nearly drew over the sand dune. Right, now I'm going to lightly draw in using that technique where we're kind of dragging it across, this kind of dragging and this kind of broken effect. I'm going to put in kind of the top line. So I'm not holding it particularly hard, not tightly I mean. I want like a broken line. If it covers up the pencil mark, fine. If it doesn't, also fine. Okay, just here and there. Adding in main shapes. I think I'll leave the little sign for later, just here and there, so I know where I am. Right, so now we're ready to split it into thirds to make our triptych. Oh yes. So we're ready to divide our image into three to develop our triptych. So we've already got the picture that we're referencing. We've already got that divided into three, so let's put that to one side and let's have a look at the image. So A4 is almost 30 centimeters, really close. So what I like to do is, using the ruler, find the center, which is 15 in the middle there, and think, right, so now I've got the ruler equidistant from the edge. Starting from the left, mark off 10 centimeters, and then mark off 10 centimeters from the right. Get the ruler out of the way, find where that mark is, bend the paper over, make sure it's parallel to the edge there, hold it and get a really good crease, open it out, that's your first thread, find it again, fold it over. Oh yes, that's pretty accurate. Now if you like to measure it with a ruler and get it absolutely exact, you can, but that's not how I roll. So now I'm going to divide it up. You can use scissors. I'm going to use craft knife and a safety ruler. I've got a cutting mat underneath. Okay, so I'm holding this really firmly, I'm holding this lightly, and I'm going to score it nice and slow. Yep, it's gone. Right, next piece. They're lined up and good. Let's put the guard back on, put it out of the way before I do something with it. Now we're ready to start adding some marks. So we'll have a little look at our reference page. I'm going to start, I think, with the left-hand image. So this is this image, and thinking which type of marks could I use in which area to create the different surfaces. So I've already got some sky, I'm quite happy with that. So I'm going to use this mark here, which will then become like this, at the top of the dunes. So remember, we were talking earlier about trying to create depth in your drawing. This is like a scribble. And one of the ways you can do that is using smaller marks on areas you want to look like they are further away. So I'm using really small, kind of hatching, and I'm changing my grip as I'm going along, adding in some marks, and this is supposed to be this area here. And I'm not going to draw that yet because when I add the water, it'll make it bleed, and I want that to stand out as quite a stark shape. Okay, so I'm just looking at this, trying to create some dark and light areas. Right, let's go into this dark bit here. Right, let's go a bit more create. Now remember, you're not pressing on with the pen, you're just kind of lightly holding it. And if you want your marks to be darker, you can do them a bit slower, because then you get more ink on the page. Just bring that down a bit into the little pond there. If you can hear the rain, it started quite a bit here now. Okay, so I need to make this dark bit here, this area darker. A bit more like that, bit of this. Right, so when I get to the front here, there's quite a large area of dark kind of scrubbiness. I can start to use this kind of mark and this kind of mark. So now I can go a little bit wilder. So see, I'm holding the pen differently. And again, remember, I do work quickly. You can take your time. This is something you can go back over and add more into. So this is just learning the technique, experimenting, seeing what you like. And then you could use this for your other pieces of work another time. So I'm doing this hatching and cross hatching. Okay, just checking. I might need to make that bit a bit darker there, and I think around there a little bit darker, smaller marks. Go off the page with some of your marks as well, because you don't really want like an edge, plain edge around the outside. So scribble, scribble, scribble. And I think that's about ready to start having some water on it. So, yep, lid on so the pen doesn't die horrible death. Got me tissue, my water. Let's start. So I'm keeping reference into this, wetting the brush, and let's do the sky first. So quite a bit of water. There we go. Got some nice clouds going on there. You can always go back and add in if you want. And I'm going to use that technique where we drag across the top just to get to soften the edge of the sand dune there. Very nice. Okay. Yeah. Back in the water, get rid of it, and I'm going to drag that up a bit. Get rid of some of the water. Remember, if you think it's gone wrong, it's only that you don't particularly like what you've done. Let's darken it up a bit. You can't get a blade of grass wrong. That's nice, yeah. A little bit too wet there. If it does get too wet, you can dry your brush off. Just kind of pat it on the tissue and then put it back where it was, and it acts almost, see the way it's kind of sucking up the ink? So you can get rid of some of it. Right, let's move on a bit. Yep. So getting quite a nice. If it gets too dark, get rid of it, the ink, wash it off and dry your brush. Do want this bit to be quite dark, because this is like one of the darker areas. Wet again, it's got a bit dry. Just keep looking at your reference image just to get ideas from it. Again, you're not trying to copy it, you're just getting ideas. Now this bit we can go a little bit wilder. Wow. More water right to the edge, and you can see the paper is bending and ruckling. Now we can talk about that later on if that bothers you. It doesn't particularly bother me, I must say. Right, let's have a look. I think I'm happy with that. So I'm going to do the other two sections, so they are at the same stage. Right, that's the next bit. Let's go. Right, so now all three sections are at the same stage. So they've had the pen on, and they've had the wash, and still a little bit damp. It's the first one that I did. So why a triptych? Well, firstly, I like a triptych. I like the broken image and the way you can change the gaps when you're displaying the work, and it'll kind of change the idea of the work. You can even start moving it up and down, or you can display them separately. You can have completely three separate pieces of work. And also for this technique, I think if we were trying to do one large piece with all the scribbling and then all the water and then all the working on top, I think it'd be a bit much. So let's go back to the first one and just move this out of the way. Let's get our technique sheet back. So we're at the same stage. This looks a little bit darker. Maybe I used a different pen. No, I don't know. Also, I don't know if any of you have got this happening with your pens. Can you see the different colours that have come out of the black? So you think black is just one tone, but these, beautiful, there's like bits of blue and bits of orange all kind of popping out. So you might get this type of thing when you're creating your pen and wash drawing. Really nice. I think they call it chromatography in science. So it's like the different elements of black. Anywho, so looking back at this now, I can start to work on top of it. So if this is the area at the kind of bottom of the image here, I can then, this one's bone dry, I can then start looking at it and thinking about adding marks on top. So holding the pen, different pen, holding the pen differently to create different marks. And again, if you're at the front of the, like the front of the image, larger marks to create that kind of feeling of depth. And again, slower if you want the marks to be darker. And you can start adding in some hatching and cross hatching to create some really nice dense tonal areas. Remember, not pressing on. Pen doesn't like it if you press on. And you can go in different directions. You're hatching, you're cross hatching, and you're controlled scribbling. Looking at clumps of grass, you might think, right, I just want to add some more marks in. Some little darker and lighter areas. Are you happy with your sky? I think I added some more onto my water actually. I think I put some kind of vertical marks. So you can start looking back at this. See, this is kind of this area here. So, using those techniques, this is now dry enough to work on. I can now start. Remember I said about I didn't want to draw this in because if it got wet it'd kind of bleed. Now I can add it in. So it's about there. This kind of little piece of fence post, and put that in there. I can start going back over it, tiny marks in the distance. Some bits I'll just leave as they are. Smaller marks just here and there. And this is where you can really take your time. So I'm not going to subject you to just watching me drawing. I'm going to do a little bit of this, and then I can just show you the finished piece at the end. So looking at different directions, holding the pen, I'm just drawing just by moving my fingers here. This is kind of quite a controlled style of drawing. You can see you've got like the crisp marks against the soft ones, which works really well. So let's move down here, darken up, bit of hatching and cross hatching, controlled pointy scribble, if that's a technical term, I don't know. I can break up that hard line with some softer marks going across. This is kind of representing this area here. And remembering, we are just creating kind of an impression of it, and this is a reference image that is just giving us ideas of how to develop our drawing. I quite like this bit here actually. I'm just going to add a little bit into that, but not much. Like I said, into the water and that. Okay. So I think I'll leave that like that for now, and you can work on your pieces, and then I'll finish this and show you the finished piece. Okay. Okay, so I've added some more marks in, and I've faded out the ink a little bit more here and there. And like I was saying before, I really like the way this particular pen has got some little tiny hints of colour. So that's my finished triptych, and that was the original. So you can see it's not a copy, there are elements of it, like I have put the little sign in and the fence posts going across there, but there's bits of it added in and there's bits of it missing. So you can, if you want, you can put it in a clip frame. I put like a neutral one behind, and that's it, finished piece. I hope you've enjoyed that, and you've got some interesting, whoops, got them in the wrong order, some interesting pieces of work from this workshop. Okay, thank you.